Hi, today I'm excited to tell you about a supplement that can lower your blood sugars by up to 60% or more, and it's one that hardly ever shows up on a top 10 list of blood sugar reducing supplements. I'm going to give you the data on it, I'm going to prove to you how powerful it can be, and then I'm going to show you how you can get this nutrition from food or from supplementation to totally take control of your blood sugars once and for all. So whether you've got normal blood sugars, prediabetes, or diabetes, and you want to improve your blood sugars and stabilize them for life, this video is for you. I'm Dr. Dave Clayton, and let's get started. So let's look at some of these supplements that are marketed for controlling your blood sugars. We've got chromium and bitter melon and cinnamon and vitamin B1. The list goes on, and some of them have got really good data on lowering your blood sugars, but nothing close to the kind of numbers that we're going to be talking about in this presentation. Now, what is this supplement that is so powerful and yet hardly ever shows up on a top 10 list? It's fiber. Fiber is something that most of us have got in the closet, but we don't take it out because we think it's just for constipation. So we leave it in there and we ignore it, not knowing that it's perhaps the most powerful tool in the toolbox for controlling blood sugars. Why is fiber so powerful when it comes to controlling your blood sugars? Well, it's because fiber acts like a sponge in your intestines to soak up sugar and keep it from getting absorbed. What happens is if you don't have fiber in the diet and you have a piece of cake or some candy, the sugar gets dissolved in the small intestine and it readily finds its way to the glucose receptors in the intestinal wall. But if you add fiber, what happens is it creates a gel or a matrix, and it soaks up that sugar and keeps it from hitting those receptors. So what happens is less of the sugar actually makes it to the receptors, and the sugar that does make it to the receptors takes longer to get there because it's got to fight through all this fiber. And we're going to see real data on how that can smooth out the curve of your insulin and your blood sugars, normalizing those blood sugars in most cases. So what happens to your blood sugars when you add fiber to the diet? Well, in this trial, we're looking at 19 patients who had high blood sugars and added 2 tablespoons of fiber before breakfast and 2 tablespoons of fiber before dinner. Now, their standard diet was pretty close to what most Americans get. It was 14 grams of fiber a day, a little below the average. And we essentially doubled that amount of fiber by adding another basically 7 grams before breakfast and 7 grams before dinner. And what we saw were some major reductions in the blood sugars. Now, at breakfast, we saw a 13% reduction in blood sugars. Not too shabby. And at lunch, we saw an amazing 65% reduction in our blood sugars. And then at dinner, a pretty respectable 41% reduction in blood sugars. But remember, we only took the fiber before breakfast and before dinner. So how did we get this massive reduction in our blood sugars at lunch? Well, the answer is that fiber is sticking around in our body for a while. It's making its way through the intestines, it's binding up those blood sugars, and it's really smoothing out that curve of absorption. In fact, if we look at the curve, what we see is that a number of key metrics are improved when we take the fiber. So here we're looking at the dinner portion of the trial where we take fiber before dinner, and what we see is that not only does the peak glucose come down, but the time to peak is elongated. We see that smoothing out of the curve where it takes longer for the blood sugars to rise, and they don't rise quite so much. And then the area under the curve is the total accumulation of glucose that gets absorbed in the body. And what we see is that that one is also substantially reduced. So we see most major measures of glucose absorption are improved after we take that fiber. And that dose lasts for 5 hours or more. In this trial, the lunch portion occurred 5 hours after that breakfast dose, showing you how long-lasting and how powerful a dose of fiber can be. Now, you might say that's great, but it's just one trial. It's a couple of dozen patients at most. Well, the good news is this has been duplicated many times. In fact, this is an aggregation of 28 trials, 1,400 participants, and the average increase in fiber was 11 to 13 grams of fiber across these trials. Nothing major, in fact, less than what we saw in that previous trial. And here we're seeing Over half a point reduction in hemoglobin A1C, 15 milligrams per deciliter on the glucose coming down, and then importantly, we see insulin sensitivity improve. Insulin resistance goes down. Now, 1.9 points of insulin resistance is super important because that would take you from essentially a pre-diabetic profile to normal. So what we're showing you is that 10, 13 grams of fiber a day is enough to take you out of that pre-diabetic range back to normal, doing nothing else. I told you this was going to be incredibly powerful, and I hope I'm proving it to you. And the data keeps coming. If we look at participants who got 34 grams of fiber a day versus 14 grams of fiber a day, very similar to what we were just looking at, across 10,000 patients, another meta-analysis, we see even more substantial reductions in blood sugar and similar improvements in insulin resistance. 2+ points of hemoglobin A1C, 10 points in glucose, 1.2 points on insulin resistance. So time and time again, what we see is that adding just 10 to 15 grams of fiber can have an incredible impact on your blood sugars and might be enough to move you from diabetes to prediabetes, prediabetes to normal. Pretty incredible. Now, if all this data on lowering blood sugar wasn't impressive enough, here's something that's even more amazing. The patients that got the most amount of fiber in this large meta-analysis of over 10,000 patients saw a 45% reduction in their risk of dying from any cause. That means from cancer, from heart disease, from stroke. And it wasn't just this one trial that showed a mortality benefit to having high fiber. It's multiple studies showing dramatic improvements in longevity just by adding fiber to the diet. Whether it's a 23% reduction in your risk of death from any cause, 27%, 59%, 54%, these numbers all show the impressive power of fiber to extend your natural lifespan. Really important stuff. And it's a supplement that we all have access to and probably already own a bottle somewhere in our closet. Now you might be looking at all this and saying, that's all great, but I don't have diabetes. What's in it for me? Well, you can prevent diabetes if you start increasing your fiber intake now. For patients that don't have diabetes and have the highest intakes of fiber, what we see is a dramatic reduction in the risk of ever getting diabetes. Over 40% in this trial. And just like we saw previously, multiple trials showing the same thing. 28% reduction in your risk of getting diabetes, 18%, 30%, 59%. Substantial reductions in your risk of diabetes simply by increasing the amount of fiber in your diet. And across the board, what we're talking about is going from the range of 16 or 17 grams of fiber a day, which is what most people get, up to that benchmark of 35 grams or more. That's enough to see all of these incredible benefits. Now, if you don't want to take a supplement, that's okay, because studies show that fiber from supplements is the same as fiber from food. It doesn't matter where you get your fiber from, whether it's intrinsic in the food or whether it's from a supplement, the measures are the same. So where should we be getting it if we try to get our fiber from food? Well, the good news is that fiber is in all plants. It's not in any animal foods or dairy, but all plants have got some element of fiber. What I'm going to do is show you some data on where the highest fiber foods can be found. So when we look at vegetables, artichoke heart, spinach, cauliflower, broccoli, here's a list of some particularly high fiber foods that have got very low calories for the amount of fiber you get. Now, fruits also can be pretty high in fiber. I like Asian pears, one of my favorites, also apples, pears. You definitely want to have them with the skin, and if you can tolerate it, have the core. I usually eat the whole apple, seeds and all, and the reason is because I want to make sure I get all the fiber from not only the peel on the outside, but from the core on the inside, in addition to getting the more sugary pulp that most of us think of when we have the fruit. And then legumes are also an important source of fiber. When we look at garbanzo beans, green beans, black beans, all of these are a good source of fiber. So let's talk about next steps. Hopefully by now I've convinced you that fiber is the way to go, and that adding a couple of tablespoons of fiber supplement twice a day might not only move the needle on your diabetes, prediabetes, blood sugar control, but might extend your life pretty dramatically and prevent a host of diseases that we associate with unhealthy aging. Now, you can get that fiber from supplements or from food. In any case, you want to go from the American average of 16 or 17 grams of fiber a day, and you want to try to get north of 35 grams of fiber a day. That can be a few tablespoons of a fiber supplement, or it can be adding legumes, perhaps whole grains, vegetables or fruits to your diet in order to start increasing the amount of fiber that you're getting from whole food. I'll leave some links to some supplements that I like in the description, and if you're really interested in lowering your blood sugars, I encourage you to go to my website, daveclaytonmd.com, where I've got a lot of free materials to really help you take control of your blood sugars, including a masterclass on diabetes, a 2-part series called Blood Sugar Basics, followed by Blood Sugar Mastery, and I take you start to finish from understanding your blood sugars to taking total control through diet and exercise. I hope you like this video, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.